Chapter 245. Yes, I agree. But if I refuse to give up and press onward, surely His Majesty the Emperor and the Commander wouldn't leave such recklessness unattended. I, being both foolish and cowardly, can only believe in that. What would Emperor Kelusa and Kishir receive from Ajane? What could it be that it wasn't just about choosing the most fitting person to sit on the throne of Nalan to help, but receiving something in return? It was common for nations that have helped each other in times of difficulty to promise diplomatic or military aid when things went well in the future. Yet, Ajane's words didn't seem to imply that. Alternating his gaze between Ajane's face, which was looking at Kishir as if awaiting an answer, and Kishir's eyes that maintained a wall of silence behind a steady smile, either pondered. I suppose I should retract my statement about recklessness. Kishir, whose gaze had been studying the intentions of each other, responded in a much softer voice. Foolhardiness, backed by sufficient calculation, is not gambling, but rather a match. Indeed, Your Highness, the second prince, is worthy to be called a player. That's a generous compliment. At Ajane's calm response, Kishir bowed his head. No, if I said anything to upset you during our conversation, I apologize. Although he didn't say it directly, it seemed that Ajane's response was quite satisfactory from Kishir's point of view. Either thought, watching the light flash briefly over his red irises, that this man was truly unchanging in that aspect. There is no need for concern. Given what has happened, it's only natural for the Empire to confirm whether or not I am a person who can keep promises. It seems I have shown my hand. Kishir let out an exaggerated laugh as if his inner thoughts had been exposed. Even though you have deviated from the original plan and came to help me personally, I have felt more than enough goodwill from the side of our empire. No matter what happens, there will be no breaking of the original promise. That's a good start, with such warm words exchanged between us. With a cheerful response, Kishir rose from his seat and approached Ajane. You must be tired if we are to depart at the break of dawn tomorrow, so please retire early today. Outside of the second prince's bedroom and the room where the servants are detained, our cavalry members will take turns standing guard all night, so there's no need to worry. Thank you for your consideration. The two men extended their hands once again for a handshake. Their meeting felt slightly different from the first time. I always thought being born a prince meant living happily ever after, but it doesn't seem that way today. After Kishir and Ajane returned to their respective rooms, the cavalry members who remained in the reception room to sort out the guard shifts for the servants were noticeably less cheerful than before. How could all three servants be traitors? The prince seemed like such a great man. Upon hearing Emun's serious murmurs, Gakane patted his back as a sign of consolation and agreement. Don't take it too hard, Emun. We were fortunate to find out early and resolve the issue, thanks to Kana. If we had remained ignorant, things could have gotten worse. The prince probably thinks the same. I suppose, but it still doesn't sit well with me. Sitting next to Emun, who was sniffling gloomily, Kana didn't have much of a cheerful expression either. Ordinarily, she would have comforted Emun along with Gakane, but for now, she just silently stared at the piece of paper on which the night watch order was written. Her eyes dimmed. After the night watch order was finalized, Yidhir, still doing the cleaning up, stealthily approached the still dazed Kana and struck up a conversation. Kana, are you upset because of what happened earlier? Oh, Yudhir. Kana looked at Yudhir in surprise, but soon managed a faint smile. No, I'm okay. I'm not bothered. If there's something on your mind, don't hold it in. Feel free to talk about it with anyone. It's not good to have burdens, especially when on a mission. Despite her assurances, Yudhir seemed not to believe her. Kana, seeing the concern on Yudhir's face, fell silent and looked around. There were no colleagues within earshot. As soon as Yudhir approached Kana, everyone seemed to understand they were about to have a conversation and tactfully gave them space. Did I look that serious? A bit. That's strange. I used to hide such things well, but maybe being in the cavalry has made my facial muscles too loose. As she playfully patted her cheeks, Kana managed a slightly embarrassed smile. But honestly, it's not because of that. It's not unrelated. I was thinking about something else. Something else? Yes, about our cavalry. Kana gazed at the ground and let out a long sigh. When even the servants who have served the second prince of Nerlan for so long betray him, I wonder if the cavalry will remain unscathed. I suddenly had such a thought. Well, even if there are traitors, we may not be able to identify them. But the future is never certain, right? I remembered when the assassins came for our commander. While they were unknown assassins then, we don't know what might happen in the future. Ugh, I'm saying such unlucky things. Seemingly unhappy with her own words, Kana scratched her head again and looked up at Yudhir. Anyway, through this incident, I realized my ability still has much room to improve and I need to work harder. Of course, I don't like to doubt my colleagues who have been with me all this time, but I should make sure there are no gaps like today at crucial moments. Although her words were appreciated, Yudhir remembered Kana's secret worry about her growing abilities, something she had shared only with him. Her ability to read information had been developing to the point where she could sometimes perceive the emotions of those around her, even when she didn't want to. He remembered her confession and how she looked at that moment. Reading information is certainly a great ability, but Yudhir didn't want her to continue developing in a direction that caused her pain to identify a traitor. This was a thought he would have found difficult to comprehend in his past life as Yudhir Ale. You don't have to do that. With such intent, Yudhir replied softly. If it turns out there is such a person in cavalry, I will handle it before they get to other members or the commander. What? You saw it, even that time you mentioned. In the place they had set out to recover the red stone, Kishir had been ambushed by assassins, and Yudhir had dealt with them single-handedly, with little difficulty. Of course, it was crucial to foresee information, but ultimately, if they can't handle the situation right before their eyes, it was all in vain, and Yudhir, more than anyone, was confident in that regard. So, you don't need to worry about the cavalry members. Kana blinked at Yudhir with an odd expression on her face. After a moment, her lips, which seemed to be about to say something, broke into a smile. Ah, you're right. Here I was, fretting over unnecessary worries, while we have you, the most capable of our members, assisting the commander. He hadn't said all that, but as long as Kana looked brighter, it seemed to be all right. With her concerns resolved, Kana strolled leisurely back to her room. Yudhir followed her, entered his bedroom, and before long encountered Nathan Zuckerman, who had just returned. When did you arrive? I just reported back to Duke after returning and heard about the events that occurred in the meantime. Since the cavalry members is taking care of internal surveillance, our Palatar Knight decided to take turns guarding the outside of the quarters. So, if you need assistance, let us know. Nathan Zuckerman did not attach his personal opinion on the unfortunate incident involving Prince Ajay. It was a judicious action fitting his character. After hearing Neither's acknowledgement, Nathan went back outside for a late meal. Neither was left alone and rechecked his guard duty roster. His shift would be at the deep end of dawn, so it seemed like a good idea to rest early if possible. No sound reached him as he lay in the bed adjacent to the next room. Yudhir recalled Kishir, who had been engrossed in examining the map earlier, that he wouldn't have heard even if someone had called out to him. He had told Ajay that if the journey to the Great Serene Forest seemed too dangerous, he could choose not to go. However, if Kishir was considering backing out that easily, would he have needed to scrutinize the map so carefully? I had thought that his decision to be part of the first dispatch team wasn't entirely because he said I was too reckless. It's clear he judged it to be a dangerous mission that wouldn't be an overreaction for all of us to undertake. Then, what could Ajay have promised as a prize to Emperor Kelusa and Kishir? It was something that probably did not occur in his previous life. So, even if he tried to speculate, there was not even a slight hint that could help them guess. Yudhir looked at the old wall made of piled up wood for a while before closing his eyes. Get up, Gakane. It's my turn now. Is it already time for a shift change? As dawn arrived, Yudhir, who had opened his eyes immediately, put out his outerwear, grabbed his sword, and stepped out into the corridor. Gakane, who was sitting half asleep in a chair nearby, stood up energetically with a happy face. Why did you come so early? I could have done it a bit longer. What are you talking about? You were dozing off because you are tired. Wasn't it Gakane who was tired because he used a lot of his abilities? Yudhir, on the other hand, had been worried about his own body for being overly fine. As he questioned with such intentions, a hint of redness spread over Gakane's handsome face. Right. You came out earlier because of me. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize for this. It's only natural. Gakane, who was usually a superbly built man that didn't lose to anyone in terms of stamina, had a different issue when it came to fatigue from using his abilities. Since it was the first time he had used them so much in actual combat, his internal energy would have been greatly depleted. Go, rest. Yeah, thanks, Yudhir. After making a short report that no sounds had come from the rooms of the servants and Ajay during his guard duty, Gakane returned to his bedroom. Yudhir sat in the chair where Gakane had been sitting and looked around. It feels like it's been a long time since I have done something like this. Staying alert alone wasn't easy, but he had his own way of managing. Yudhir spent the time vacantly, recalling the abilities he had used that day and thinking about his past training regimen. Not long after, he suddenly felt a faint movement from inside Prince Ajay's room.